What More Heart Than Scars does is create a sense of radical empathy that is transformative for all that is involved.
Hey friends, Jeff here with a new episode of Conversations Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. So we are throwing the script out the door today, and I have invited my friend Zackary Paben to the show. So just a heads up, Zach is not a life science leader, and we don't talk about life science. My story with Zach is about 2 years ago, I got this notion that I wanted to do a Spartan race. And for those that don't know, and have not seen me on LinkedIn or anywhere else, I live life in a wheelchair. I have lived life in a wheelchair since 2017 because of a degenerative neurological disease. So I had this idea to do a Spartan race. And by referral and connection, I got introduced to Zach. And to be honest, nothing happened. He was going through some life stuff and it just wasn't the right time. And then come 2022, we got connected again and started conversation that led to this year, 2023, me doing 2 Spartan races with the organization that Zach founded in 2013, More Heart Than Scars. And I'll let you do a little research to find out about More Heart Than Scars, but at their core, they help people with visible and invisible scars do the impossible, most commonly through doing Spartan races or other obstacle course races. And in this conversation, Zach and I just talk as friends. We talk about the history of More Heart Than Scars, the impact of coming alongside adaptive athletes and those with invisible scars, and then translating that into some work that Zach and I are doing today out in the world to bring the message of More Heart Than Scars and radical empathy to teams. Who Zach is, his heart. He lives from his heart. He's a visionary and he's a creator in the world, and his heart is of service. I just can't wait to share with you this episode with Zack Paben. Zach, welcome to the show, man. I am so excited for this. As I said in the intro, this is totally off script from the normal guests of our show. And I get to make the rules.
I look like all your guests. Who are you kidding?
I get to make the rules. So I am pumped for what this is going to be. I mean, yeah, I have no idea where we're going to end up. And that's really good. That's really good. So welcome. I love you, man. And I'm so happy you're here.
I love you too.
And maybe in a larger context, why don't you just share with those that are listening what you're up to in the world? It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, share what you're up to in the world.
I don't have the greatest executive functioning skills. That's why my face is beet red. I thought each day, after the first day in the sun, from sunrise to sunset, you should probably put some sunscreen on for the next day. So we were down in Florida with Spartan races. If you're not familiar with what Spartan races are, it's an international brand that started with a guy named Joe DeSena, who did endurance racing while he was being he was a stock guy. He was an investment guy. And he was getting so depressed in his own life and just going out to eat in restaurants and just trying to sell. And he met some guy who was running up and down the stairs. He's like, why are you running up and down the stairs in these buildings? He's like, I do these endurance races. And so he decided to go try them out for himself. Like, he did big ones. Like, he did like the Iditarod without the dogs. He was really inspired by Shackleton. Like, he had this hardcore sense to go after what he was going to do. Like a New York guy. He's up my age. Well, a little bit older than you. He's right at we're pretty much the same age. And so Joe had this idea: what if we did a race that we didn't encourage anybody to finish. They called it the death race. What if we made something where instead of saying you get a medal, you get a seat? It was around the Halloween season. You'd get a plastic CDS skull head, and that would be it. And they wouldn't tell you how long the race would last for or what you would have to do, and you would just suffer and just try to break people's spirit and call the death race like going against it. It was such a hardcore, crazy thing. People loved it. And he goes, well, what if I did that for regular people? What if instead of the most advanced athletes out there, what if I just got people off the couch? And so out of that came the Spartan race. So it's obstacle course racing. Tough Mudder as another brand, one that Joe subsequently acquired over time. He was in competition with Tough Mudder and eventually ended up taking them over and saving them. So there's two big brands out there, Tough Mudder, Spartan races. And the idea is doing obstacle course events like you do in the military for physical training, going up and over giant bars of wood, monkey bars, climbing under barbed wire. We're not shooting at anybody. It's just but crazy difficult obstacles. Instead of just doing a 5K run, you just go. So that's what a Spartan race is. But they were never thought of it being for adapted people. That's the whole thing. Is like these are these incredible, strenuous activities that regular people that are like moms and dads that are thinking, well, maybe I'll get off the couch and go for something, or maybe guys at CrossFit or something like F3, they're going to try it. But nobody was imagining that veterans that were missing legs, people that were blind, people that were paralyzed or quadriplegic in wheelchairs could ever do it. So a decade ago, when we started it all came from, I saw an image from the most difficult race, the death race. A guy was in a wheelchair and somebody was pulling him and they just set some paracord. So he tied paracord, which is like thin cord, and he just had it over his shoulder and was trying to pull up the hill. And I looked at that and thought, I got some ideas. I think we could do that a little differently. And so a decade ago, there was one guy doing it, Michael Mills. And this weekend, there was 5 wheelchair athletes and 150 veterans, most of them with some type of visible or invisible wound, all collectively doing the race. So going from, I knew by name all the adaptive athletes. There was Earl Granville who was missing his leg. Noah Galloway was missing an arm and a leg. Michael Mills was in a wheelchair. It was just a very small handful of veterans, civilians, people together, and we all knew each other. And now it was an entire race division this weekend, and that the corral was full of almost 200 people in total. And when we started, we went through the whole progression. There was thousands of people there, and we went through the mob carrying the American flag, singing these songs and getting up and started. It was breathtaking to go from, there's a handful of people with disabilities. We're not going to say that, we're going to call them adaptive athletes that are trying something, that it was so radical that now it's so normalized. I couldn't name all the wheelchair athletes for anything. We go to different places. We showed up in one race a couple of years ago, and there was 7 different athletes in wheelchairs, and I kind of came up to them. They're like, well, who are you? I'm like, you want any help? They're like, oh, we got it. I was thrilled. I was thrilled that we've grown so much that we don't need you.
So I'm gonna jump in here just to fill in a little bit of a blank in the story, because I'm part of your world as an adaptive athlete myself. So in that moment, what was it, 10 years ago, when you were watching this, that's when More Heart Than Scars, the organization you founded, that's when it was really born, right?
Yeah. I saw that image of Michael Mills. I thought, I got to find this guy. And we had done a race with Billy, and Billy Costello was missing a leg. He did a Tough Mudder. And so in 2012, on October 27th, we did a Tough Mudder. And I thought I was helping Billy for the race. patient zero of more heart than scars is me. He didn't need my help. I needed to get back on track. I just found out my daughter had a heart defect. I was working multiple jobs. My career had shifted. I've been in ministry for a long time and was at a place that didn't have health insurance. And my daughter had a heart defect. It was costing us $1,000 a month. So I ended up working at the YMCA as a lifeguard at 40, as well as working at the ministry, as well as doing construction work. And I meet this guy named Billy who came in and he was missing a leg and he was swimming his red hair. And but he had a pin in one of his fingers. He also his hand was moving. And so I was watching him. I came up and said, "Hey, could I look at your hand?" He was used to people talking about his legs and different stuff. And I showed him the last time I saw a pin in a finger, I threw up and I just want to look at it. And I took because when the end of the finger breaks, the bone breaks all the way down. They had to put a pin in it. And it is as grotesque as you can imagine. And my last memory of it was so bad. So here it was in front of me. So I thought, I'm just going to look at the thing that scares me. And he understood that. We struck up a conversation. And basically the conversation was, you seem chunky and sad, and you're not doing anything. If you're a lifeguard, you want to go do a Tough Mudder with me? I go, I am chunky and sad. He said, what name should we have for our team? Now, he was missing his legs. I was missing my fingers. And I came up with, we could be Team Nubs and Stubs. And Billy goes, great, I'll make a t-shirt. So he takes the perfect man. Who does the Leonardo da Vinci? The guy with the arms out and the legs. And so he whacked off an arm, augmented the hands, put a thing together. It said Team Nubs and Stubs. We thought about it. We thought maybe we should soften it a little bit for the newly amputated. And we thought, and up came the idea of more heart than scars. It says, Team Nubs and Stubs has more heart than scars. So we went and did one Tough Mudder race. And the announcer, Sean Cravell, saw it. So Team Nubs and Stubs. We did it. We had about 15 of us from the YMCA. It was great. We had a wonderful experience. I thought, I'm kind of back on track. I got to think about something besides myself. The main idea was for my daughter, Solely, who you've met. At some point, because it's both valves for her, the one that comes from her heart that goes, the valve that opens, the aortic valve that gets the blood that flows into her heart, and then also the break goes into the lungs. Both of those valves are supposed to have 3 openings, and both of her valves only have 2. So at some point, she might have to have surgery. But they say, don't worry, just watch your kid. If she gets tired, bring her to the hospital. You're a dad. Can you imagine if every time your kid looks tired, you're thinking, do we need to go to the hospital? And, the idea was like, well, we're not going to worry about it. I'm just trying to have faith about it. But I didn't want her to have the same type of experiences that I had as an amputee. At some point, she might have to have surgery. And if she's going to have surgery, she could have an open heart scar. And so I wanted to think about how could somebody, let's say she's at the beach when she's in her 20s and she's out with her friends, and if she's had that procedure done, who knows if she will or not? Maybe they'll be able to do it microscopically, but there might be that open scar. And she might talk to a cute guy and think, "Ooh, I want to go swimming. I've got my zipper thing. I'm going to see it." I wanted that young man to be able to see that scar and know what to say and say, "You're beautiful. You have more heart than scars." That was sort of that softer side of it. So we started we just did the race. And so with that was born a mission right then and there. Let's call ourselves More Heart Than Scars. Let's reach out to people that have been injured who are thinking, how am I going to run the marathon now? How am I going to do this impossible thing? How am I going to get my life back? How can we put that message out there that you're not the bad thing that happened to you? That there is still so much that can be done in the face of horror and tragedy and fear and hate, that is not what's going to be what's left, or that's not your identity.
How many people at this point, roughly, because it's probably a bit uncountable, how many people would you roughly say you or your team have been part of their story of doing something really hard like a Spartan race?
At least 50 people with visible boo-boos. At least 50 people that you can go with, like, well, that, that guy's clearly can't see, or this one's missing a leg, or that one's in a wheelchair. At least 50 people with those types of things. But the number of people that have invisible scars or challenges like autism or anxiety, depression, PTSD, I can't give you a number. We usually wrap a team of 10 or 12 around an adaptive athlete. So that's the person in the wheelchair like yourself that needs some more, help to get through. But on that team are people with visible scars and invisible scars. And there's about 12 of them, 10 to 12 per athlete. When we first started, we just have one adaptive athlete, a team of 10 or 8, sometimes 6. Now we have 2 to 3 adaptive athletes with a team of 10 people around them. So, and now there's been over 300 plus races. So that's a big number. So 300, that's 3,000 right there.
And anecdote, maybe I'm sure, I know you know some specific stories. I could share my story.
Sure. And you should.
And I'm just wondering, as you survey those thousands, 50 with visible, 1,000, 500, whatever the number is of invisible, what stands out to you most about the impact that you've observed? I mean, there's probably numerous stories of what you've never seen, but from what you've observed, what have you seen the impact of supporting people to live, not just to get up in the morning, but to do crazy hard stuff? What would you say has been the impact of that on this community, and then also on you?
I can go with just this weekend alone. This weekend alone had some pretty amazing things. So on Saturday, we were going to do a Beast, which is a 13 plus mile, 36 obstacles in Florida, southern Florida, swampy area, where we're taking our friend Erica. Erica is a wheelchair athlete. She's climbed Kilimanjaro. She's a big part of this. If you watch the Returning the Favor episode with Mike Rowe, she's highly featured in it. She's a really good friend of mine. So she's doing the race. But I got a call from one of my a former student that I worked with. It's neurodivergent, and 7 years ago, he and I did a race together, and we did several of them. In fact, he made a little claymation thing for me in his art class of basically a blob with a shield, and he goes, "Here," and I've held on to it. Out of all the gifts I've gotten, somebody did a red and black claymation thing of a guy with a shield. And gave that to me. He told me how much More Heart Than Scars meant to him, that I had him take a couple of different adaptive athletes to a race. When he was, as Mike told me, he goes, when I got my More Heart Than Scars shirt, it was too small for me. And then I got bigger and stronger and skinnier, and now it's too big for me. I was like, we'll get you a new shirt. So he calls me and says, look, I got to let you know that I'm in Florida. I know there's a race coming there. I would love to race with you. Since I've been involved with More Heart Than Scars, I've taken on this idea that even though I'm neurodivergent and struggling with things, that I was going to do everything that frightened me. He says, so I got my driver's license. That's good. And I got into college. That's great. And I got into a fraternity. I'm like, oh my gosh. He said, you can imagine for me with social anxiety, getting to a fraternity was terrifying. He said, and I'm actually became a physical trainer. Now that he was a chunky guy, he was like not super athletic, but he loved the idea of what we're doing. And he's like, so I decided I was afraid of that. So I became a personal trainer. I'm like, that's incredible. And he goes, and I'm actually studying to be he's at UCF. He said, UCF, to be a firefighter. I'm like, you're 22 years old now. You want to be a firefighter? He goes, yeah. I go, do you want to come race with us and help this weekend? He goes, absolutely. So he shows up and he gets a shirt that fits him, starts out the race. He's going along. And so my stepson, Dargan, is also neurodivergent. 19 years old, afraid to drive, has a hard time connecting, making friends. And so we put them up front. They had the shield and they had the flag. And I stood back and I watched one of my former students that was afraid to do things, to build a relationship with my son that has a hard time making friends, connecting. And that they're going along and I'm going back and forth and I'm listening to their conversations. And Mike's telling Dargan how not to be afraid to drive. And how to have courage and how to have more faith than fear. And all of these, and then juxtaposed, they're stopping, going through the mud. Now, people that are neurodivergent on the autism spectrum, going through mud, eating different foods, different textures, strangers, loud noises, all the reasons that you would think this is going to be hard for them. Both of them were doing every single obstacle. They were encouraging each other. They're carrying the American flag, carrying the shield, going back and forth, helping the adaptive athlete. And so I got to see, rarely do you get to see that you can impact a young person's life and then them come back around and mentors, somebody that you love, a family member. It was, yeah.
It's your tagline as an organization, making the impossible possible since 2013.
Yeah.
It's kind of but I'll say, use the word cute. It's a nice phrase.
It's a nice phrase.
But what you just described is literally the impossible made possible.
Yeah.
Like, it is impossible in the ordinary sense for a neurodivergent young man on the autism spectrum to do everything that you just described.
Every obstacle.
By and large, impossible in an ordinary sense. And it is so. And so, again, I just want to put the spotlight on it because we all have little taglines, quotes, Sunday sermon things that are said, but this is real.
It's real because it gets people outside of themselves. I mean, we're preaching a sermon every weekend. There's the story in Matthew where there was a paralyzed man that was carried on a mat through a crowd. And they had to get up on top of the building. They had to pull the thatch roof apart and lower him to the feet of Jesus. That's what they did. That's happening every weekend. Except in that story, we are the people in the crowd. People that have joined us are people that have just watched us. We have people that have just seen, so I originally saw an image of Michael Mills and Stephen Reed working together at that death race by pulling with the cordelette over their hands. I thought, ooh, it impacted me. I reached out to them. I mean, once we had our first event, that's the first person I found said, let's do a race together. But we are the crowd. We're the witnesses. We are also the person that's hurt. But there have been times that I have been carried by others through this race. There's times that I've been triggered through my PTSD so severely. There's certain things. I was with Earl Granville one time. We were helping him. I was down in a mud pit. It was freezing cold. He was climbing up the rope and I was holding it still for him. And people were like, yay, the guy with one leg is climbing a rope. I'm like, all right, it's not that impressive. He's really super strong and he's 25% lighter. He gets down. And I settle him down. He holds me, he's like, you go up there. And I'm climbing and we're both laughing like nobody knows it's a big deal for me, So I'm climbing up the rope. I get to the top and I slip and I come down and the rope opens the ends of my fingers. And I slam into the mud and I come up and there's just the blood on my hands. And I'm like, oh, the cold shock of the water. It was super duper cold. The blood on my hands, the burning sensation of the fingers, I was worthless. And so he had to help me get up out of the mud. We got a medic, we taped up my hands. And I was silent for the next 4 miles. I couldn't really do anything until I was able to get back out of my shell to come through it. So lots of us are triggered during these events, whether it's a neurodivergent issue, whether it's a PTSD moment, whether it's we have people that have been they're survivors of being molested, sexual trauma, in close proximity, helping each other. There's all kinds of things that can come up. Just a loud noise, just somebody yelling at someone can shut somebody down. So in that miracle, we're all the ones that are in the chair. Whether we're in the chair or not, we're the ones that need help, all of us. Mm. And we get the chance to be the helper, including, and this is where the miracle comes in. The incredible thing about what More Heart Than Scars does is when we were getting to the obstacle, Erica said to Mike, Erica's our wheelchair user, she said, make sure Mike gets me. She was coming up over an inverted wall. And Mike climbed up there and he knew what to do. And he held her coming off the wall. And see, there's this skill exchange where a lot of times people in wheelchairs are not giving as many opportunities to really help other people. It's possible you live it, but in general, it's not the perception of the wheelchair user is the helper. The stigma is the wheelchair person is being helped. In the case of neurodivergent places, it's not the idea that the neurodivergent person is in the place to be the life-saving person, to be trusted with the most difficult task, whereas so many times people helicopter those kids and protect them from stressors. And in that moment, Erica's coming off the wall and says, I want Mike to catch me. So Mike climbs up the wall and grabs it. So we have the skill exchange. In that moment, the person that's neurodivergent is in the spot of protection. And the person that's in the chair is empowering that person. And when they swap that exchange of we're doing this for each other, we're empowering one another, healing begins to happen in a way that shifts a kid who's afraid to be athletic, afraid of a variety of things, to go like, I'm gonna be a firefighter, And so watching him interact with Erica and then watching the guy. So when we got to a place that was just the wheelchair couldn't go through, it was an actual swamp for 1.5 miles. It was nothing but swamp. It was impossible to go through it. And so he said, and my boy Darkin goes, and Noah goes, we'll do it for you. We'll take that part. And so they skirted the swamp and I'm following them through with the dog. And when we met back up, we exchanged the burden. That's a Sunday school lesson that if it could be applied to America, to the world, of the people that are broken are actually part of the healing process, that we are at once the witness, we're at once the broken, we are at once the helper, and we are also the ones that forgives and that loves and transforms. We are all of those parts of the story together.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, wow, there's so much there, Zach. Because I've been in that, in the chair, literally,
right
in the seat. Like I feel the emotion and the connection. And I love the way you describe that we are all of them. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I'm wondering, again, you have this decade of reflection and experience. I'm wondering, how do you see these ideas playing out in the real world? Not off the Spartan course,
right?
Because you and I are starting to build something, but I want to talk about that. But what are you seeing the implications of this? Not the impact, but what do you see this looking like outside the Spartan course?
It's relationships. It's in connecting with somebody in that way out on the course, and then connecting then allows people to be brave, because the real obstacles are transferring, if you're a wheelchair user, when you don't feel like it, when it's raining, when it's when you're having depression and you're isolating and you want to just go into your own little man cave and hide, to call out. So I can think of Justin Falls, who when I met Justin, he was still in school. He was finishing up school. He was dressed as Burger King at the Renaissance Festival, and I was wearing the armor and stuff with it because we're trying to promote selling beard calendars to give beard calendars to the veterans of the VA. It's wacky. I mean, the ways we've started, I mean, the missions that I've gone on are just ridiculous. So I met Justin Falls at the Renaissance Festival and said, wow, I think we need a joust. So somebody snapped a picture of him in the Burger King outfit, me with a kilt on and the shield. And we made a connection. And I said, hey, I want to get your number because we had an adaptive athlete who was supposed to go through a Tough Mudder. But I think maybe it could be you. Left it at that. I called him the next day. He's like, I'm a quadriplegic. I go, an incomplete quadriplegic. Now, the difference between a full quadriplegic means all four limbs are completely severed, no movement, no feeling, breathing tube all the time. Think of Christopher Reeves. In impartial ones, it means that he has minimal feeling and movement through his legs, but he can't control his legs, can't control them at all, but he can have some sensation. His right hand is closed like it is C, and his left hand works pretty well. But his muscles are set to pull in but not push away. And I talked to him about going to go do a Tough Mudder. So that you're wondering what the impact is beyond the race is that initial conversation that him deciding to race was what is going on with the disability community and what's going on with men in general. I said to him, hey, I want you to do a race. He says, who knows? Maybe we'll get on Ellen and you can dance. He goes, first of all, I'm not a very good dancer. I go, well, maybe you can get a lady. He says, presently, there's so much complications with the lower half of my body. I'm not particularly interested in a lady relationship. I was like, that makes sense. He goes, why should I do this? I said, because somewhere out there is a young man that is scrolling through social media. And because their body doesn't work the way they would like to in a relationship with a woman, because they can't dance, because they're in the chair and they're seeing themselves as a para or a quad, as a death sentence, they've got a gun in their hand. And they're thinking of pulling that trigger, but they're just scrolling through and they're just searching quadriplegics, paraplegics. And they're going to see that a young man that was a quadriplegic completed a Tough Mudder race, and they're going to put that gun down. He says, I'll meet you tomorrow for lunch. That relationship went from doing one Tough Mudder to another Tough Mudder to getting a Spartan trifecta. And while we were going through that, the relationship back and forth was he went on to finish college and then enroll in and to get his doctorate in pharmacology. While he was working on his doctorate in pharmacology, he went into an able flight program for teaching people, wheelchair users, to be pilots. He went on to learn how to be a pilot, to get his pilot's license, to graduate from school. And we're still racing. We'll come back. Well, let's do a 50-mile thing together. Let's do this every, a couple of times a year. Let's make sure that we're still connecting, how those people wrapped around him, believing in him, and me depending on him. I'm helping Justin. Justin has told me if there's some very dark things. Sometimes in my physical health, I have chronic pancreatitis, and there's been times where I'm in tremendous pain in the hospital, and I'm calling him up. Sure, he's now a hospital pharmacist. That's helpful. But he understands what chronic pain and hopelessness and fear feels like and how to just get through that. So I reached out to him. I'm not helping Justin. We are brothers that help each other. So he went on to get a job at the hospital. He went on to buy his own plane.
Yeah.
The number of people, if you go look at the world and you say, how many people graduate from high school? That's a big number. Well, how many people graduate from college? Well, how many people get their doctorate? Well, how many of them, go on and get their doctorate and do Spartan races? And how many of them, their doctorate Spartan races, get an airplane and can fly a plane? But then how many of those are quadriplegic? And the answer is one.
Yeah.
There's one guy
that
has done all of that. And it continues the impact of him out in the world doing that, but how it impacts my life. And so this idea that we're helping the wheelchair athletes.
Well, I'll share. So my first race with More Heart Than Scars was this past May down in North Carolina. And it was a life-changing experience. But the number, we had about 30 people. It was a huge number because that's kind of More Heart Than Scars flagship race.
Right.
Local race.
It was our 10-year birthday party too.
Yeah, there was probably 25, 30 people. At least 20 of the group came up to me as the wheelchair athlete, the adaptive person, and said, thank you. And the impact of that, yes, those people helped me over walls and through mud. And yeah, of course, that was the impossible made possible for me. But what I'm aware of is their thank you, that there was the impossible made possible in them.
Yes.
That something in them, by them being a part of that experience, was healed.
Yeah.
And there was no words exchanged about what that was.
Right.
But it's clear. And I had the same thing in July with my F3 brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of rough and tumble guys, but the number of thanks that I got, out of the 18, probably all 18. So I'm just aware of the healing, reciprocal healing.
Yes.
That is taking place on these Saturdays and Sundays and, whatever days they're happening. It's amazing. It really is amazing. And, and I say often, if everybody out there treated one another like they treat me as a wheeler,
right,
there would be no war on this planet.
Right.
There would be no war.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a
well, it's that shift. I mean, because it's interesting because you can stand for moments. I can imagine you getting out of your car at some point and you're standing and you're a big, tall guy. And someone can take a look at you and see you in one way, and then they see you pull the wheelchair out and shift into that chair. We're all afraid of our own vulnerabilities. There is some grace and mercy that we give to other people in that. Some people want to shy away from that. Look at it. Some people are dealing with it, but we all know deep down, I'm either going to die or a lot of stuff's going to break along the way. Right. And the older you get, there's more people that you love and care about who also have had something that happened to them.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite of the Superman thing. It's more of like the everyman, like, oh, you pause and you go like, oh, that, I want to be kind about that. Even the karma of like, I don't want it to happen to me. There's all these different feelings that people have around. They're not sure how to deal with it, but they do. They begin to see common humanity and treat with more grace and respect.
Yeah,
that does happen.
Because to me, this is, we're seeing this now extend into teams and to organizations where, one fine day I call you up and I say, hey, I have a team that needs to transform the level in the way that they trust each other. And you said,
right,
to me, at a drop of a hat, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about these ideas, these not just ideas, but these real experiences and the impact it does have on the broader society, on teams, organizations. Sure. What is the sauce here? Let's call it secret sauce.
The secret sauce?
Yeah, that is applicable in any situation, in any set of relationships.
Well, I was listening to one of your podcasts talking with a gentleman talking about first mountain, second mountain experiences, going from the idea of ego self on the first mountain, things to achieve, get things done. And then the second one is more about purpose. And he said the most important thing to transfer from one to the other is empathy. What More Heart Than Scars does is create a sense of radical empathy that is transformative for all that is involved. And the best way I can describe that is I became friends with Michael Mills. I saw the gentleman doing the death race in the wheelchair. We went on, did Spartan races. We did a variety of things. And one day he calls me and goes, "Hey, I'm climbing, I forget the name of it. There's some mountain in Georgia that has like, I don't know, General Lee or somebody, Stone Mountain in Georgia." And he goes, "I was trying to go up there with my family. I got to a certain point and it said no more wheelchairs." And he goes, "But I wanted to see the top and it said no wheelchairs. So I got out and I crawled to the summit." I go, "Of course you did." I go, "So I was wondering, now we're bringing other people to do it. People either carrying something really heavy with them or they're crawling with me." He said, "Do you want to come with me?" For Burke's Big Adventure was basically kind of a Make-A-Wish type thing. He said, "You want to come with me now to Georgia and crawl from that point to the top?" I go, "Yeah, I think I'll do it. I'll get some knee pads and some gloves and give it a shot." Nothing could have prepared me for crawling, being on my hands and my knees that entire time. When he stopped the calf, I just leaned over. I had to kill it and speed wherever. I didn't get up. I was with him, and we had so much fun together. We were close. It's painful to crawl. The fact he can crawl as paraplegic is amazing. His hip flexors are incredible. It just happens to be that where his injury is allows him to drag his legs under, and he has arms that are bigger and juicier than you could possibly imagine. I say that Michael Mills' arms looks like a raccoon got into a dumpster at a New York restaurant and ate all night long. That is how fat he is. He's just this big tattoo guy. He's pulling so long, so he's doing fine going up there. And I'm beside him, and we're watching this. I'm trying to understand why we're doing it, and it was bonding and close, and we had this beautiful time together, even though it was painful and stupid at points. But when we got to the very, very top, I really had to use the restroom. There was no way to go. There's no way to hide it. And I was looking, I was like, "Look, I got time to find food." He goes, "Yeah, why don't you go to the bathroom?" So for the first time in 6 hours, I stood up. And I needed to get across the top of the mountain to get to the bathroom. And I started jogging. And I'm starting to run. And I'm just crying. I'm thinking, Michael never gets to run. He never gets to stand up on his own. He never gets to run. He never gets to this thing. And so I'm in a kilt and I've got armor on and I'm looking like I must look like a crazy man going across the thing. And so when Joe DeSena, the guy that owns Spartan, got a hold of Mike and Mike challenged him to try the race in a wheelchair, this is where the secret sauce comes in. This is why we're doing this in corporate theme. So that CEO of Spartan and eventually Tough Mudder decided to try out his own race in a wheelchair. And I told him the story about that with Michael. I said, "Look, if you spend all day in that chair, if you do everything that he does like he does," I said, "you got to be careful, because at the end of the day, you will not be the same man." So we duct taped his legs to a Crazy Creek chair, put him in a wheelchair, and he's thinking, "I can push." He's trying to push along the way, and it's not working out. I had a veteran yesterday who's new to the wheelchair situation with us, thought he was going to push through the swamp. I go, "I think you might want to use the system. I go for it, but I think you might find that this is not a parking lot." So Joe DeSena, this tough guy, trying to roll it. He can't get that chair in the mud. We get to the start of the race, and he's like, "I got to take a leak." He's going to get up and say, "Oh, no. You can either kneel and hide behind this tree, or we'll give you space. We can cath you. What do you want to do?" He goes, "I think I'll kneel." So he took it from the whole day in the chair. A couple miles into it, Michael Mills' left wheel breaks off his wheelchair. You and I have had this experience. The left wheel breaks clean off. I'm on the back of the wheelchair with Joe DeSena. Our charity's only 3 years old. Biggest opportunity I could have ever gotten. I'm holding him the whole way. I go, "Hey, here's the deal." He goes, "Oh, no, I'll just get out Mike and get my chair." I go, "No, I'm going to go to Mike's chair and be on the brake." And this guy, Chris, who's now on our board of directors, he's the president of our board of directors, who's my daughter's godfather, said, "I trust him with my daughter. I trust him with you. He's got you. You're going to finish the race. We're going to finish the race." And so they went on. So we went and did the remaining 7 miles on 3 wheels. You did a mile with me on 3 wheels. We did 7. When we got to the finish, though, that Joe was supposed to go on to do some other event, he stayed and he waited for us when he finished. He waited for Michael to get for us. He didn't even change his clothes. He made sure we had food. We're all standing there. And when we got to the fire jump, he came over and lifted Michael up and put him on my back. And we jumped over the fire together. And Joe was there with us. And he looked to the 27 of us. We're helping another adaptive athlete named Tim. So it was Tim, Joe, and Michael, 3 chairs, 27 people between the 3 of us. And he stands there, looks at all this and says, you will never pay for another Spartan race for the rest of your lives. Now, there's about 7 of us that are still doing this. But the impact it had on Joe DeSena was there became an adaptive part of the sport that no adaptive athlete pays to do a Spartan race. No wheelchair user, no amputee, not for a Spartan race, not for a Tough Mudder. They don't announce this. They don't make it available. We have a thing where it's like it changed his life so much that he wanted to empower those people and says, you guys are my heroes. This is what that experience of being in there shifted him, and it's changed the entire adaptive world. So much so that here I was this weekend, flash forward 7 years, there's 150 people. Not one of them paid to race. 150 people. Dan McDonald, the second guy, that second person in charge of Spartan, was racing with us and helping us the whole time. So we've impacted the brand of Spartan and the brand of Tough Mudder. That's 5 million people a year. The radical sauce of going from the, hey, my achievement, how fast can I run in the Spartan race? How good can I get the Tough Mudder? Am I number 1? How good do I look in the outfit? Did I get the medal? Did I get the prize money? All that stuff is all pushed away to purpose. How am I helping others? And that opportunity that we have by giving people a moment to be in that wheelchair for that moment, either taking a turn in the chair or taking a turn on the chair to help pull it, bonds us together in a way that we are responsible for the well-being of each other in a way that is dangerous, uncomfortable, and 100% real. You cannot falsify how much you weigh. At least tell me, oh, I'm about this. I'm like, I pick up like, no, you're not. Like, if I'm picking you up, I can transfer, or I can do a pull-up. Either you can or you can't. We're going to find out, especially for 6 hours in the chair, we're going to find out who you are. You can't lie. You can't lie, and you can't do it by yourself. And so when you put everybody together in that system, like Joe had on the chair, like I had with Michael Mills, now we're giving teams a smaller version of it. But we're finding that the impact is they see the people they work with less as competitors, but more as brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember, so for those that are listening, Zach and I just did this with a team in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we set this up where we got hospital wheelchairs and they raced me. They raced each other, but they raced me. It was fun. A little scary at times for them. And by the way, I won.
Yes, kicked it.
I better have won. But I remember...
Because you had to win.
I had to win. And I remember sitting in a huddle after that and talking about appreciating what somebody else has going on, and just this, as you are calling it, you could see it in the moment, this radical empathy and this extension of oneself for another. I mean, they literally sat in not my chair, but in a chair for however long that took. But yeah, it was amazing to witness in real time empathy, relatedness, connection be created. Because we talk about it,
right,
having empathy, but we witnessed empathy being constructed in the moment. And it was,
yes,
and it was amazing. As we come to the end of our conversation, Zach, I'd like you to invite people, not to a Spartan race or even donate to More Heart Than Scars.
Right.
What I'd love you to invite people in is into this message
Yeah.
That the possible can be born out of the impossible.
Sure.
What's the invitation for folks that are listening in that?
Yeah. We were talking about having the the leadership team at this company get a chance to be out in that wheelchair moment. And while we were climbing up Great Bear in South Dakota, it's a small mountain, but it's a fun mountain. The front left wheel broke off of the wheelchair, which put us in a situation that makes it more challenging. And in real life, the wheels do break off. So we get to situations where you think you've got it all set. You planned it out the best you can. You're going for it, and the wheels fall off, and you have to stop and find a way to make it happen. So in that impossible situation, you got to call it something bigger than yourself. There has to be something bigger than you to get you through it. You and I saying, you've said to me a lot of times, you think about it, that we want to live a life that is so radical in our faith that if God doesn't show up, you're hosed. And there are moments where following this calling for this charity and to try to deliver this message of hope and deliverance, of faith and of love is, costing me almost everything. And there have been times there's no way we could get where we're going without the intervention of the divine. And the divine, in my experience, has shown up every time that I've pushed myself to the point of failure. That at the end of all of my trying and all of my planning and all of the ego and all the hope and all the slither, that at that place when I still continue forward, even when, that's where the transformative impossibility is. It's transformed. It's like saying, okay, you've gone as far as you can go and you're willing to continue. That's where the strength comes in. That's where the grace comes in. That's where the mercy comes in. That's where the deliverance takes place. But it's never going to be found on the couch. It's not going to be found in comfort. It's not going to be done in just a Zoom meeting. It's not going to come from an email. It's going to come from being taken to the absolute edge of your abilities and to find out that you are found wanting.
Yeah. And if I could just add, I love that so much. And the impossible made possible is not a solo sport.
No,
it is not. So going to the end of your rope, getting off the couch, pushing through pain, discomfort, all of it, it is not an individual sport. The impossible being made possible, in my experience, is a team sport.
Yeah.
And I remember being at the top of that small ski mountain in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and looking at those folks, 12 people plus you, 13, and looking at them in the eye and saying, what just happened, us going up this mountain, is impossible.
Mm.
But because of you, because of us, it was possible. And so, man, everything you said, and then just adding this element of team, that it's not an individual sport.
No.
I would just say to everybody who's listening, if there's something in your life that you think is impossible because of a scar, because of an injury, because of a belief, it's not.
No.
It's not impossible.
Well, the guts of where More Heart Than Scars comes from. Yeah, I wanted somebody to be able to identify for my daughter one day that what she's carrying is not make who she is. But the idea, when I watched an idea of seeing Michael Mills being pulled by Steven up a hill with a little force, I think I could do better than that, is the sense that the scrappy little kid, like when I was stuck when I was a little kid, when my hands were stuck in that machine and I had to get free, that's when I was able to tear myself free of that. That there is something inside all of us that can do unbelievable things. That you feel like you couldn't do it, but if you get pressed enough, that you can pull through it and literally save yourself if necessary and get the help that you need. But so I was a kid that was afraid of heights, missing 7 fingertips, and dyslexic. So getting my left and my right, terribly confused. And I went on to become an outward bound guide, which means I was rock climbing, tying knots, doing all these. But the other side of my fear was that mountain experience. So for me to become a mountain guide and not having any sort of thing done for me, in order for me to be a guide for them, it required I had to lead at this level. I had to know these number of knots. I had to know all these different ways to escape. I had to overcome the dyslexia. I had to overcome the fear of heights, and I had to overcome my own amputations. And I had to do it with excellence. And it was not given to me. When you earn that, there's a part of you that shifts, that is forever different. Yeah. That's the guts of the charity. So that idea, I said it out loud, More Heart Than Stars, in 2013, 2012, really started saying 2013. But it goes all the way back to that survivor spirit of who I was a little kid. And so I try to live my life in a way that my 10-year-old self would be proud of me. Am I letting fear hold me down, or am I being gutsy? So it takes radical empathy, and you got to be gutsy. And you need the witness. You need the collaborative call of your brothers. I think in Mad Max Fury Road, there's insane moments where these guys are like just nuts. And they're before they end their lives, they yell out, "Brothers, witness!" And they jump off of a moving car into some spikes and blowing up. They have this crazy idea that they're going to go to Valhalla if they die valiantly. But I think in all of us, all men and women that are trying to be